Hello everybody, welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary, and if you're new here, I'd like to say welcome. For this video, I'm going to show you how I made this super easy fondant ruffle cake. When I say super easy, I mean all you need is a rolling pin, basically. So if this sounds interesting, please stick around. For this cake, I decided to use a marshmallow fondant, and I used the Liz Merrick marshmallow fondant recipe. I will try to remember to put a link at the bottom in the description so you have that recipe. And the reason I decided to use this fondant is because it does not dry as fast as you're working with it. And when you're making ruffles with fondant, you need a little bit of flexibility time. Little time to mess with it before it starts. You don't want it to crack on you and get elephant skin, and this recipe is excellent for that. So I conditioned it with some shortening and rolled it out on my board, and I popped all the bubbles. And now I'm taking my already crumb-coated cake. I used dark chocolate ganache on this one. It's not necessary. You can use buttercream, you can use Swiss meringue, you can use American, you can use whatever you want. But since I'm using the dark chocolate ganache, I am just putting on a thin layer of shortening, a very thin layer of shortening. Nobody's gonna know it's there. It's just there to get the fondant to stick. Now you can use a rolling pin method to transfer your fondant over to your cake. I'm just so used to, I've been doing this for so long, I just use my arms and I just lift it up on both sides and gently carry it over and drape it over my cake. And then you work out the bubbles on the top and around your edge, your top edge there, so that the weight of the fondant hanging off the edge does not cause any ripping or tearing, which I don't find is an actual problem with the Liz Merrick marshmallow fondant recipe. I'm telling you, this recipe is awesome. So you're just gonna go around your cake and you're gonna work it down. And when you get pleats, just pull them apart like that and use your hand to gently attach it to your cake. Try not to stretch it out too much because it does tend to get a little thinner towards the bottom. And you just could cause some problems for yourself later if you're pulling too hard on this fondant. You want to gently coax it down around to that bottom edge. Now it might take a little time to work it out, to get it all smoothed out, but you will get there. And this recipe, like I said, just really buys you some more time, way more time than most store-bought already made fondants. And then once I get it attached there, I just kind of use my fondant tool to push it down flat on the bottom and then use my X-Acto knife. You could use a sharp knife, whatever you want to use. You can use a pizza cutter to cut off that excess. And then I'm just using my fondant smoother to push it down to the board. I had accidentally cut off a little bit too much on the bottom, and I had to stretch that fondant down to the board a little bit more. And then I used my paddles, two of my fondant smoothers to create a nice sharp corner by butting them up against each other around the outside edge. Now to get my support, since this is a 2-tier cake, I have my top tier in the fridge setting up. It had already been done. There's no need to show you how I did both of these tiers of cake. I did the fondant exactly the same on both. Now I'm just using these boba tea straws, some fat straws, pushing them down, and then I use my scissors to mark where the straw meets the top of the fondant, lift it up while I still have those scissors kind of pinching the straw a little bit, and then I cut off the excess and push it back down, and that way they are all flush with the top. And use a little bit of buttercream. You could use ganache if you want to. You can even use melted chocolate. Say hello to Rebecca there. She was busy that day, in and out. And this is what's going to get your top tier to stick to your bottom tier. Now just lift it on there gently. Since it was chilled, I could just use my hands to lift it up on there and center it. Now we're gonna roll out some fondant to make those diagonal kind of strips, ragged strips around each of the tiers. I wanted to add a little bit more than just the ruffles. So I did a torn fondant technique, which just means rolling out your fondant fairly thin. And then set it aside and let it firm up a little bit. Give it about half hour. Then go back in and just make tear lines. No rhyme or reason to this, no measuring, just tear them with your fingers. And set them aside until you're ready to use them. Now I had sprayed my cake with just some water. I have water in a water bottle. You guys will see me if you've seen my other videos if I haven't explained it. When I'm spraying the cake with something, typically it's just water. And that's what is getting the fondant pieces to stick to the fondant on the cake. You could use shortening. I do use shortening quite a bit for this technique as well. What I do like about the shortening is that if you get a piece on there wrong, typically when you use water, you might end up messing up with the finish of the fondant on the cake if you need to move anything. And with shortening, you can just lift them off and relocate them, and it does not mess with the finish. But I just went ahead with water this time because I had it right next to me. Now I'm making the ruffles, and I rolled out this fondant really thin, about, I don't know, a little less than 1/8 of an inch thin or thick. I tried anyways. And I am just cutting out arched panels, arched and then some wavy line pieces here. I did some smooth because just for variation in texture, and some of them with an irregular cut just to give them a little bit more irregular of a pattern. And this is what I mean by all you need is your rolling pin. I did not use a flower former. I didn't use a piece of foam, nothing. I'm using just that edge of that rolling pin to roll the ruffles in. And as you're rolling it, your piece of fondant is going to stretch. And what happens is when you lay it down and you get it straight across the bottom again, you are pushing those ruffles right into the top edge of that fondant. And it's just that easy. And then I do like to set them aside and let them firm up a little bit before I place them on the cake. Now, what I should have done was add some Tylose to this fondant because I did originally want my ruffles to stand up a little bit taller, but they got really droopy because I did not add any Tylose. Tylose is going to make it firm up a little faster. But in this video, I wanted to show you how you could do it with no extra things, just the fondant and the rolling pin. It's all I used to get these ruffles. Oh, I guess, okay, disclaimer, I did use some toothpicks to help hold them in place while it dried. So I guess 2 things that you need besides your fondant. And when you're ready to attach these ruffles, I just put some water on the back side, underneath side of these fondant ruffle strips, and just stuck them on. I just kind of made up the pattern as I went, and I did want to add some color because I had these really pretty silk leaves that I wanted to use to decorate this cake, and I wanted to bring in some of that color. It's almost like a peacock blue, teal-ish color. A greeny blue. It's really pretty. And I just wanted to add some accents of that in the front, but have it be mostly the white fondant ruffles. And there you see me sticking my toothpicks in to help anchor those fondant ruffles so they didn't fall over too far. I don't mind them drooping some. I think that adds to the look, but I didn't want them falling over completely. And I continued this arch pattern around the back side. And just add as many fondant ruffles as you want. Now I know somebody will ask me, can you do this with buttercream? No. The honest answer, you cannot get this exact look with buttercream. You can get a buttercream ruffle effect, which maybe I'll show you how to do that too. It's just the pieces are not as big. The ruffles are not as tall. So you're gonna get more of a uniform, more subtle ruffle than you can with the fondant. And there I just dusted the ruffles with some pearl luster dust because these leaves had a sheen to them and I wanted to make them blend a little bit more, make them look a little bit more like the same color. And I'm using my hairpin technique, which is just taking a floral wire and bending it in half and making like a hairpin out of it. And that's what I'm using to attach these leaves to the cake. The floral wire is coated in white, so it blends right in. And there it is, guys. A very simple but impressive looking fondant ruffle cake with some silk leaf decorations. And I should say also some torn fondant accents as well. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.